Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to EUROBIKE 24. As you might have heard, the official opening at the Yellow Stage is at 11 a.m. And if you might be asking yourself, okay, what should I do until then now? I have a suggestion for you, because we have an interesting live podcast here on this stage. So grab yourself another cup, croissant, and stay here for a while, because we're welcoming the Business and Cycling podcast with its host, Wyatt Weiss. And we've been talking about the question how brands nowadays balance D2C, marketplaces and traditional distribution within their channel strategy. So at the podium we have Stijn Vriends. Where are you? Stijn? Hi Stijn, welcome. From brand manager with Castelli. You do it? Okay. You're prepared, right? Okay. So without further ado, give a big round of applause for your host, Wyatt Weiss, and the Business and Cycling podcast and his guests. Wyatt.
Morning, everyone. So yeah, just thank you for coming out today. I just wanted to do before we get started, give you a quick overview of what the Business of Cycling podcast is. It's also a blog. So I started the Business of Cycling back in last year, and I wanted to provide a channel for the management, for the business side, the strategy side of cycling, which has come to be something that people are interested in. It's not big, it's quite niche, but we do have over 1,500 subscribers on the various podcast channels. We've done over 35 episodes, and we've talked with over 12, or just around 12 CEOs and founders from the cycling business. So I invite you guys to check it out. I'll put the links up a little bit later. So getting to this discussion, which I know is going to be fun. So in the modern commercial landscape, cycling landscape, a sound channel strategy is critical for success. So the way that which brands see these channels has really changed over the last 10 years. I mean, I remember not that long ago that these people here would say that Amazon and e-commerce was out of the question. Okay, but that has changed. And so today we're going to be discussing how they feel to be successful in the channel strategy in 2024. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through what we consider the four channels, the four main channels, which are going to be e-commerce, marketplaces, online specialist stores or third-party retailers, and then the traditional distribution. So we're going to walk through each one of those, and then we'll allow the guys here to comment kind of on some of the questions that I have prepared. So to introduce the group here, first to my left is Stijn Vriends. Stijn is Dutch. He's been living and working in Italy for more than 20 years. He's the chairman and CEO of Vittoria, which he took over in 2020. And with the help with private equity investors under his guidance, Vittoria has grown significantly, expanding its product range, developing an omni-channel sales strategy, and investing in sustainability. Stijn is 52, married with 3 studying daughters. Next is Jonathan Sherwood. He's an industry veteran of more than 20 years. He has worked for some of the most iconic brands in the cycling and power sports industry, including Fox Racing and Bell Helmets, as well as an executive board member at one of Europe's biggest cycling P&A distributors, representing brands like SRAM, Camelback, Cat Eye, Panaracer, and many others. John is passionate about bikes. He has a collection of more than 40 bicycles and loves documenting and preserving the history of the bikes from the 1990s. He recently started a YouTube channel aimed at restoring and preserving the history of these largely forgotten years in cycling. Next is Michael Stimola. Michael is a longtime entrepreneur who has started multiple successful companies, from an R&D materials company, a general contracting company that designed and built storefronts in greater New York City, and a successful food franchise concept store with over 150 locations. Mike has been instrumental in stabilizing the ENVE business model since joining the company as turnaround CEO in 2023. And our final guest is Steve Smith. Steve is the head of cycling and partner at MVC Group, which includes Castelli, Sportful, Carpos, and the Zoot brands. Like me, he is an American expat enjoying the best of Italy. He's been in Italy for 24 years with the MVC Group, and his big event this year is the Iceland Rift Gravel Race coming up on July 20th. And he's interested in speaking about kind of managing through the COVID boom, bust, and recovery, kind of what we've learned and how we should grow from this, how we should grow and make the industry better. So to get started, we're going to start with the e-commerce channel, which has surely seen some upheaval in recent years, in particular during COVID, when people were forced to spend most of their time at home. E-commerce became the preferred channel for brands to reach and convert new customers. So I'm going to start with Steve, and I'm going to say, what does the e-commerce channel mean to your brand, Castelli?
Yeah, we have to divide this really between the e-commerce DTC, direct-to-consumer part, as well as the third party, which we'll talk about later. So speaking directly about the direct-to-consumer channel, what we've seen over the last few years is that consumers have demonstrated a strong preference to buy directly from the brands. They'll choose for a brand, come to that site for a experience of the brand to choose of those products. And so that's become an absolutely vital component in how we transmit what our brands are about.
So you feel like the e-commerce is the purest expression of your brand?
It's a purest expression where we're talking directly to the consumer, and these are consumers that are directly interested in our brand and where we can present our brand in the way we really want to. So,
Stan, how is e-commerce for Vittoria? How is it important to you guys, and how do you guys see the channel?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for Vittoria, having a good functioning e-commerce direct to consumer is actually our real contact with the final consumer. It's our storefront. You know, this is what we are, and this has to be perfect. It has to. You should be able to get anything there. You should be able to really understand the products, select them, and have a good experience. And we love the feedback we get. We love the direct contact with the final consumer that we normally are missing because there's distributors, shops in between. And now it's also for us becoming a revenue stream because it's creating revenue, but I think in the past we didn't have. So it's crucial. It's not the most important for sure, but it's crucial for us as a brand and as a company.
Michael?
When I came to ENVE about a year and a half ago, ENVE had aggressively used the internet, social media, to build their brand and get their word in front of people, but it really hadn't used the e-com side of it to generate a lot of revenue. We've done that in the last year or so. It's been really good for us. It's allowed us to get direct feedback from consumers, much more so than third party or fourth party the other way. But I think one of the challenges on e-com for somebody that's typically a manufacturer selling through distributors and independent bike dealers is we have to inventory product. People expect to get product in 24 hours, so it's a change for us. But it's become a much bigger part of our business, and we expect it to grow considerably.
So it sounds like the message is the key here. It's an expression of the brand, direct from the brand itself, and that makes sense that you guys would want to have that pure kind of unfiltered experience for the brand. John, who worked for years for Bell and for Fox, what are your thoughts on this topic?
So from my perspective, a brand's website is the home of the brand and is increasingly essential in the mix. I think if you look at all the other channels available to brands, you have a number of options in terms of engaging with the consumer and converting a sale. But all of the other channels, you're sharing that space with competitors, and you're also relying on third party to communicate your brand, tell your story, educate the consumer on your product. Your D2C site, your brand website, is the only place that you can have a one-on-one, unfiltered conversation with the consumer And for that reason alone, I think it's vital and critical. I agree with other members of the panel. It's not necessarily critical for converting a sale. There are plenty of other channels to do that. But in terms of having that one-on-one interaction with your brand and that unfiltered conversation with your consumer, it's essential.
So I guess staying on the e-commerce topic, how has the politics of this e-commerce channel, and I'll start with Steve again, how has the politics of your e-commerce channel affected your dealer network?
Yeah, I think there's two critical points that I would add, kind of segue from the last question to this one, is that, as John said, this is where you present your brand, and towards the other channels are going to be successful with strong brands. And a strong brand has to be strong digitally. Okay, and consumers, when they come onto a website, they expect to be able to buy. So it's really coming from the consumer side, but also what the brand needs to present in towards its retailers. And I think if we go back just a few years in the cycling industry, retailers, other channels had a strong negative reaction to brands selling online. The ones that are doing well now, they realize that they need strong brands. They realize that strong brands have to be strong digitally. And so the calculus has changed. It's no longer I'm competing against a brand. It's can I be successful? Can I make money with this brand? And I think that's what the challenge will be in the future, is finding ways to share this space, because all the channels are important. Omni-channel is not just a word. We have to meet consumers where they are. Cyclists go into bike shops because the bikes are so complex now, they need a mechanic. That's the best showroom all of our brands have for our products. So we need that, and they need to be successful with us. Online is a huge, third-party online is a huge channel as well. So all these channels are important, and the stronger retailers, the ones that are looking towards the future, they realize this.
Maybe Stan, if you want to talk a little bit about how your D2C strategy has affected the dealer network.
Yeah, well, something I think everybody should keep in mind. So the conversion rate of a website, okay? So everybody talks, how much conversion are you able to make? So you have visitors and that then buy. And so what do you think is a good conversion rate?
In my experience, it's around 1%.
1%. Okay, so this website is not made for selling. It's for the 99% of shoppers. There's 99% of people that do not buy, but they have a good experience. They look around, they look here, they compare. And where do they buy? In the shop. So since we launched the website, the biggest protesters in Vittoria were the shop owners in Italy. They were like, "Whoa, you're going to sell yourself, you become my competitor, etc."
That's the argument that I've always heard, is you're my competitor now.
Yeah,
and how did you react to that? How did you explain to them your strategy?
We told them, you can always buy from Wiggle at minus 40% anyway, so you might as well. So, and year to date,
you didn't say that.
Yes,
you did.
No, we didn't use Wiggle as a name, but we used the 40%. Yes, which is true. But we year to date, we are 23% up with the dealer network in Italy. So in the current market. So the website is actually helping us to sell more in the shops. I'm convinced.
When did you turn on the e-com?
In the half of November last year.
Okay. Very
so
recent.
It's truly different. So yeah, keep that in mind. You're not selling online. You're making people to shop and to think about the brand and then later buy somewhere else.
So it feels like what we're saying is e-com, it's not a competitor, but it is a facilitator, kind of a lubricant of the purchase. They might not actually purchase, but the idea that they can purchase perhaps pulls them farther down the funnel. So I'm going to move on to marketplaces, which when I talk about marketplaces, we're just going to talk about Amazon, because Amazon's the only show in town, really, at least, I know Decathlon has some business, but I just want to stick with Amazon, which, for all intents and purposes, is a 500-pound gorilla. Amazon is gigantic. Their reach online cannot be ignored. So I guess what I've seen is keeping Amazon under control is the task, right? Because you get access to all these shoppers, you get access to all these people. I'm sure, how many people here have an Amazon Prime membership? Okay, so all those people, there's like, looks like about 60% of us have Amazon Prime memberships. So, you know, it speaks for itself. I'm going to start with, I guess, Michael, you might be excluded from this one, I think. Or are you guys on Amazon? You're on Amazon. Can you tell us about what your position is with regards to Amazon?
Yeah, we went on Amazon so we could have control over Amazon. Products were getting sold on Amazon by others, and by setting it up directly with ourselves gives us control over pricing, over what's online. So Amazon's good if you're in terms of policing the site, if you're the owner of the brand. So we did it as a defensive mechanism more than anything to go on Amazon. Do we see a lot of sales through Amazon? You know, it depends. I mean, it's small products, little things they'll buy. Nobody's buying a $10,000 or $12,000 bike on Amazon from us. Actually, people don't buy big products like that from us online anyway. People use our online portal to kind of design the bike they want to buy online, put it all together, and then they do ultimately buy that bike in a shop. But they play with what they want to buy online. They don't do that on the Amazon side. Amazon is all the small little, I'll call them replacement parts.
John, you know, you have deep experience in the helmet business. What are you seeing in terms of Amazon and how the helmet business has been dealing with Amazon in your experience?
So to echo what everyone's saying, it is a major channel, and it's one of those channels that you have to get your hands around, or it'll sort of take itself down its own path. So you do need to get your hands around it. It is becoming a more important channel from a revenue perspective for many helmet brands. What I would say is I think there's a reality we exist in today. I think in some P&A categories, particularly helmets, have been hard hit through the overstock issues and the repercussions of that. And many, whether it be brands themselves or distributors or retailers, have looked to the Amazon channel to try and alleviate some of the pressure on that inventory. So I think there's idealistic ways of working with Amazon, and I think in a perfect world with a blank sheet of paper, there's a really practical ways you can control Amazon. So sell through Amazon instead of selling to Amazon is a very simple way to make sure that you can control it. However, I think the reality today is that brands that haven't taken the time to get their hands around Amazon, have a proper, robust process in place, employ staff that have the experience and the skill to actually manage it, because that's another thing. Amazon is an absolute beast, and it's a really complex beast. And if you want to own it and do it well, you need to bring in the skill set into your company to make sure it works.
You have to invest.
Exactly.
You have to
And
invest.
so I want to be clear that there's an ideal state, which I think we could wax lyrical about and talk about how simple it is. And then there's a reality of today, in that it is a channel that has probably been a little bit fast and loose and used to exit high inventory, which hasn't necessarily led to the optimum use of the channel. But it can be fairly easily managed with the right skill set in your business, and I think it can be a channel that is not disruptive if managed properly.
Now we get to probably Stan and Steve, who have probably more experience with Amazon than with ENVE. Stan, what's your experience? What is the strategy that Vittoria is taking towards Amazon?
Well, I think it's important to remember that 60% of searches for product in the US starts on Amazon. So people think, I want to buy something. 60% they look for the thing on Amazon, and then maybe after that they go to the website of some other specialist or the brand itself. So if you're not on Amazon yourself, you're just giving away 60% of the people that are interested potentially in your product. So I think it's a no-brainer. As a brand, you have to control that channel. And if you control it, you know, you can then also play with the similar discounts, you can control your products, but you really have to see it as a channel. You cannot compare it with other with other shops like online retailers like in the US, back country. That's a completely different beast. So Amazon needs its own manager, needs its own inventory, needs everything dedicated. But if you do it that way, just as John and Mike just said, is that it works. You know, you make turnover, and again, like you do with your own website, you help people to choose, you help people to inform themselves, and then you hope that they end up buying maybe in the shop or somewhere else your products.
So it seems like the best case scenario is to manage it and manage it well. The second best case scenario is to do nothing, and to not be on Amazon. And the worst is to let it just kind of do whatever it does. Let the dealers do what they want to do.
But not being there is not possible.
Not being there is not possible.
If you're not there,
No, you're right.
then somebody will pop up every day. You cannot police it, as you just said, if you're not there yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you own the brand and you're there, you're selling, you make Amazon happy because you sell, then they're willing to push out others that are selling your brand.
So it sounds like you have to be there, you have to police it.
I think there's no choice. Yeah.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
I would echo a lot of what's already been said, adding just 2 points. In the U.S., we are dealing directly with Amazon because the regulatory regulatory situation allows you to have much stronger control over who sells, not only pricing, but also who sells on Amazon, which is more difficult to do in Europe.
Can you explain a little more?
In the U.S., if you're on there as a brand, you can decide who else gets to sell your product, okay? In Europe, it's much more complex. Once you've sold your product to a retailer, he has much more freedom to sell it where he wants to, okay? So it is more complicated in Europe. The other point that I would add is that through the COVID correction, let's just call it that, with a lot of extra inventory, we did let some of those products head out, knowing that it ended up on Amazon, and it was a very effective channel for moving that. And my analysis of it is that it reached a very different consumer than what we have through our other channels. Even on the product mix, the men's, women's divide, the price level of products we see really indicates it's a totally different consumer. And I think as an industry, managing it in the right way, it might be a way to reach out to people who can actually come into the sport.
Thank you, Steve, for saving me there. So the next topic is going to be third-party retailers. As we know, this space has been full of drama in 2023 with the bankruptcy of Wiggle CRC, the largest player in the online specialist cycling space. So I guess we're going to jump into this one. How has the closure? Maybe we'll start with John. How has the closure of Wiggle CRC affected the business that you've been involved with since its closure back last year?
So, you know, there's no denying that, particularly in the UK, that channel was a really important one for many brands. Specifically to the helmet business, I think, and I don't want to undermine the importance of that channel because it was big business, but helmets specifically have really wide distribution everywhere, from small mom and pop independent shops all the way through to national chains, and then of course the likes of the pure players. So while it was a significant, I would say, a dent in the business, I feel that like consumers were still able to easily seek out and find our products and our brands despite that happening. In terms of filling the void, once again, I think the timing is really poignant in that, you know, broadly speaking, across the market, helmets are overstocked. So I don't think the demise of that channel was really pivotal in impacting the business. I think there were much greater dynamics happening in the market which were impacting the helmet category specifically, but many other categories as well. A couple of things to keep in mind. You know, when a consumer is shopping for a product online, they're generally using a search engine. I think there's an interesting debate around how many online retailers you need to have to actively serve your consumer base.
And we'll
So-
get more into this.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into this to see like what is the natural
Exactly.
ecosystem of third-party retailers that should be
Yeah.
existing. And I think Steve made a point that if you look at fashion, that there's been a real culling of the herd in the past few years, which may or may not have been because of management or because of the nature of that business. But it feels like there's a correction happening right
Yes.
now. And
Agreed.
at the end of the day, there's probably going to be maybe 3 or 4. I don't know, but that's
At the end of the day, we all exist to get our brands and our products in the hands of consumers, right? And I don't think that the demise of that particular channel has irrevertibly changed the ability for brands to do that. It's a bump in the road. But yeah, I think consumers can still get their hands on what they need.
okay. Michael, I know you guys sell components, you sell accessories, premium wheels. Were you guys affected by the closure of Wiggle, CRC, and Chain Reaction at all? I know they didn't have a big presence in the U.S.
No, the biggest impact it had for us was some of our distributors and dealers who were financially impacted, which put them on the radar for us in terms of finance. As a result of that whole situation, we went out and we insured all our receivables after that. Kind of tipped us off to start doing that. And I think a lot of our the other thing that did for us, quite honestly, is the only other impact for us is, at least in the U.S., there are a lot of people looking for jobs that we were able to pick up some really great talent. So I would say we used maybe that as an advantage to us. But yeah, there was no direct impact to ENVE.
Steve?
Yeah, so of course the Wiggle CRC and then the internet stores component in Germany going bankrupt, of course, took a big nut out of the market. But I think that the malaise of the online third-party retailer is maybe hidden a bit by what happened to those 2 big ones, but a lot of the other ones have suffered badly in this. And I think you touched on this, the luxury, but also luxury and fashion areas. The third-party online retailer in these areas has absolutely cratered over the last 3 or 4 years.
Farfetch?
Well, Farfetch had a 2.4 billion valuation. Now it's propped up by a 500 million bridge loan from Coupang Group from Korea. You've got Matches Fashion that was valued over $1 billion. It was sold to the Fraser Group for 55 million pounds and was shuttered less than a year later.
Does Castelli look to fashion as sort of a model for the distribution channel strategy?
Well, not so much looking to fashion, but I think we ignored this at our peril, because what happened in these other markets is that they sprang up before the brands had their own online retail. And then they got very, very aggressive into the discounting phase. As brands started their own retail, consumers preferred the brand shopping experience. And these third-party brands got into really a catch-22, because to get consumers, they had to discount. The brands didn't want to resell through discounters, so the brands pulled back. So they had less and less desirable brands, and they had to discount more and more to get the consumers until they really cratered. I mean, you even have more in the fashion area, not so much luxury, but you have the ASOS, the website, not the brand. Their market valuation is down 80% in 3 years. You have, 95% ASOS. Zalando is down 80% in 3 years. So we need to, in the cycling market, if there's going to be a vital third-party retailer, we need to find its reason for being. Now, in our market, we have the whole component part. We have the fact that Shimano and SRAM are not selling directly right now, which is propping up these third-party retailers, which is causing people to go there, and then they buy tires and helmets and wheels.
But I think that the interoperability of bike components, someone that can tell the story of how everything works together, I think that there'll always be a big demand for that. Where in fashion, maybe there isn't a ton of added value to kind of a reseller like that. So
So
that's
saying,
one.
you're saying even more strongly towards Shimano or SRAM. Who better than them
Right,
to
but
tell
I'm
this?
not- it
So
could
it's
be
it's
hubs,
we're at a
wheels.
crossroads, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, so so we have 4 channels. We say our own website. We have this Amazon third parties, and then we have the shops. Yeah, and the shops, they exist because they give service. You know, they help you to install the bike, and you know, you get service. You can go to somebody. It's also clear that the own website of us works because we have the whole range, all the information. You get everything. It's not the cheapest. It's not the easiest to buy, but you have everything there. Amazon is by far the easiest to buy. You know, you've paid before you know, and then it's next morning on your doorstep, and there's nobody that compete with them. So what leaves for the third parties is price. That's the only thing they can compete on.
Yeah.
They can never be as good at service. They can never be as good as delivery, and they never have the broad and depth of the range that an own website has. So
Yeah, when you put
structurally,
when you put it that way, it's brutal. It's brutally
they will
obvious.
always- and this was what's happening. That's why you see bankruptcies. That's why you see huge discounts beating up. And so we have to be there. It's impossible not to be there, but you have to be really careful. We lost a lot of money with the bankruptcy of Wiggle and the internet stores. A lot of money, not only in lost sales now, but also lost payments. They just didn't pay us because they were bankrupt. So it was a big hit for Victoria last year, and so we are very careful now.
That was. Thank you, Stan. That was really. He really kind of put that all together in a really nice. Steve.
Yeah, I would just like to add one more word to my comments.
of course.
Is that I'm not forecasting the doom for this channel or denigrating it. I am launching though as an industry, we need to find
the structural challenges
how
that they
does
have.
how does this channel add to the picture? I think it's something that needs to be defined
That's
in the
what
next few
Stan
years. Yeah.
So we're gonna get into the fourth topic, which is around the IBDs, which is the biggest, most important channel for everybody. And then after that, I'm going to do a short Q&A. So I've worked with a bike shop for a little over 6 months now as consulting on the marketing side, and I have to say, working in the trenches of a bike shop, I highly recommend anybody that works in the bike business to spend time working in a bike shop because you really understand how this business works, right? You really understand what's happening on the ground, and it's not as sexy as the e-com. It's not as sexy as the other channels, but that's where everything happens, and that's where our lives, our livelihoods is made. So, as you can imagine, we're all talking about e-com. We're talking about Amazon. We're talking about third-party channels. These have all basically come to light, come to fruition in the last 10 years. So all of this business that we've talked about up until now for the last 30 minutes has basically eroded market share from traditional bike shops. So this has been, I imagine, I don't own a bike shop, but I can imagine that this has been incredibly difficult for these people that want to try and make a living working in a bike shop. It's no one's fault that this happened, but it did happen. So I guess to start, because of the adoption of these new channels, how has the assortment of independent bike dealers changed in the last 10 years in terms of categories? Maybe start with John.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one, and I think this is perhaps slightly controversial, but at the end of the day, like I said before, we all exist to get products into the hands of end consumers, and each of these channels serves a purpose. And I think what's really important is that the people who are behind those channels understand the role they play in the task of getting a brand or a product into the hands of a consumer, right? And I think as brands, we need to understand what success looks like to us, understand who our consumers are, and understand which channels our consumers are shopping through in terms of how we develop our go-to-market strategy. But just to put something kind of crazy out there, I agree that independent bike stores are the absolute backbone of our industry. Not only do they provide the best level of service, but they are also, in many ways, the custodians of those local communities and local cycling scenes, which is absolutely vital for cycling. One of the things which really interests me is when a lot of brands, when they try and tackle channel management, the way they sort of enter into it is they look at their range of products and they will select maybe one or two sort of really flashy colors or really high-end bespoke pieces, and they say, okay, we'll take this $400 helmet or 350 euro pair of shoes, and we'll give this just to the IBDs. Okay. But the reality is the number of IBDs who can actually be successful taking in a very high-end product is really small. And what I say is, imagine if SRAM or Shimano only sold chain and cassette to independent dealers. Save the high-end stuff for the big pure players who have the massive reach, who can perhaps take a broader range than an independent. But the true bread and butter product, the cables, the chains, the cassettes, the tires, imagine if that was only available to IBDs. What would that do for our industry in terms of building stability, creating an economy that was really stable, actually served the end consumer better, et cetera, et cetera. Once again, controversial. I'm sure the theory can be picked to pieces. But I think that, in my mind, the independent network is absolutely vital. It's critical. Like I said, more than anything else, I think it builds community. And if you speak to any brand and say, name your top 5 bike shops in Italy that you would want your brand in, not the ones that do the most revenue, or your top 5 stores in California, UK, wherever, that you would want to see your brand in, generally speaking, they're not super high revenue stores, but they're stores that do a great job representing your brand, ranging your product, and they have great cycling communities around them. So, to go back to your question, I think it's really important that brands look at all of these channels, understand what success looks like. And hypothetically speaking, if you're a brand that can only produce 100,000 pieces of something a year, if you can meet the demand for that and sell those 100,000 pieces through 1 or 2 channels, you should just park the other ones. There's no point in staffing up, draining resource, going after these other channels if you can only make X amount of product and sell X amount of product. And in my opinion, one of those channels has to be the independent network.
So yeah, you hit on a great topic where that these bike shops are sort of pillars of the community. They are a distribution channel that is alive and that will kind of transmit your brand to the world. So I guess, Michael, I'm interested to understand your take on what kind of the assortment, in your opinion. What is an important assortment? What is working in the bike dealers right now that you're seeing after all this evolution that we've talked about in terms of digital channels?
Yeah, I think the biggest change for the bike dealers channel for ENVE over the last years is that we've changed the product we sell. We went from a components company to a full bike business, and the requirements for us of a dealer at the full bike business side versus a component business side is a different dealer in a lot of ways. So the dealers that are able to do a full bike for us are fewer than what we would have had just selling components. So that's changed the dealer profile for us. But the biggest dealers that we have, and I would say the best dealers that we have, they compete in all these channels we're talking about too, right? They have their own websites. They sell direct to the consumer. We did the Amazon piece to control the Amazon piece, but they were selling on Amazon too. So the best business people in the bike business, whether they're the company, the manufacturer, or they're the dealer, or they're the distributor, all the way through the chain, they're competing. They're getting their word out all through these same channels too. So a really great dealer for us who comes to us and says, hey, you're competing with me by selling online. The big guys don't say that to us. It's the little guy that does. The bigger and the more diverse dealers for us are already selling into these channels, and it makes it a smaller network of stores that can do what we want them to do.
Steve, from a clothing standpoint, I know that there has been, in the last 10 years, there's definitely been a move away from physical dealers because of this growth in online. For you guys, how has that changed your strategy? Because you've been there throughout these last 10 years. How are you guys approaching the dealer network, and how are you continuing to be competitive in the dealer network?
Yeah, it's not been intentional to reduce the dealer network. A lot of physical retailers have cut back on clothing. Yeah. Exactly. And of course, clothing has the seasonality, so every 6 months you have to clean it out and change to winter to summer, which is hard for a physical retailer. The better ones are doing really well at it, and personally, I'm quite optimistic on the future of the physical retailer because, cycling requires bikes, and bikes now require maintenance more than ever, and so cyclists are going to be going to their local bike dealer, and so we as an industry have to realize what a golden opportunity is. How many other industries have their consumers going into a physical place every few months where you have a chance to connect with them physically and show them what you have, right? The electronics industry imploded from a physical retailer because they don't need that. You can't fix your electronics now. You can fix a bike. So we need to look at this physical retailer as a showroom, but it can't just be a showroom where somebody goes in there and buys online at a discount. So we have to find a way that we can give this the opportunity to this retailer who has people coming in, maybe to buy a bike, but especially for maintenance. This is a chance for us to get in front of them, show our products, and give them a chance to make extra money.
Just to play off of that point, the dealer network for us, and when we look at people that buy a full bike from ENVE, less than 10% of them maintain it themselves, right? So that dealer has to have great service and great maintenance, because when they take the bike back to the dealer for maintenance, they kind of sort of look at it as they're taking it back to ENVE for maintenance. So if we have a shop that's not capable of having the right mechanics and the right inventory of product to be able to repair bikes, it changes the dynamic of what that dealer is.
And you just hit on it. It's like these dealers are extensions of your brands. And so this is incredibly important. And one other thing that I have noticed, I know this seems probably obvious to most of you, but until I saw it, I didn't realize it, was that when someone buys a bike, they typically buy clothing, they typically buy a helmet, they typically buy shoes. So it's an event for that person, and then when they come back, you're getting that additional kind of impression and opportunity to convert. So in terms of tires, higher rotating product, how are you guys continuing to be competitive in the traditional bike store space, Stan?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's not to forget that the independent bike dealers more and more are not anymore independent, because they've been eaten up by a specialized track. Giant is doing similarly. There will be a day that also the Pond Group will have their own network, I think. So more and more shops will not be independent, and it will become very similar to the way automotive are managing their dealerships. And that's a big problem, because I cannot put Vittoria tires into a specialized shop apart from under the somewhere. But so that's the problem. So a big part of the market is becoming not anymore independent. And the ones that stay independent, a big trend there, I think you've all seen, they are becoming more and more empty. A good shop today has less product. In the past, the more bikes there were in the shop, the better the shop was. Actually, they were on the roof, they were everywhere. And now actually you have one bike in the middle, shiny, and then you hope that somebody is, and then they buy another bike that is maybe stored somewhere in the back. Which means that the stuff that you can put in the shop is less. And it has to be excellent, you have to have a good display, and you have to fight with other, in our case, tire brands, to get that place. So it's more hard than in the past. But if you do it well, this shop that remains has huge turnovers, and they've become really big companies and not just small shops. So the opportunity is there, but you have to do things differently than in the past.
So we just got a few more minutes, and then I wanted to take some questions. So if anybody wants to ask questions, we're going to give you the opportunity to do that. What I'm seeing in IBDs, and John mentioned this when we were talking, is that there is a sort of key account, and it's probably always been like this, but it feels like that, you know, as I talk with entrepreneurs and as I talk with managers in the cycling industry, that there is like this layer of key accounts, especially in Europe, Girona, London, all in the main metropolitan areas that are, we'll say, like the thought leaders in the business, the thought leaders in that city. So for you guys, I know that everyone here deals in relatively premium brands. Can we talk just very briefly about the evolution of this key account concept? Is this something new, or is this something that has been sort of underscored with COVID and with the consolidation?
I certainly don't think those type of accounts are new. I think, you know, going back generations, there's always been those really great bike stores that understand where they are positioned in a city or a town or an area. They understand the consumers there, and they build their ranging around it and their activities around it, and they're actually tailoring what they buy to the people that they serve. And I don't think that's anything new. What's really fascinating for me, though, is if you look now at the customers that I guess you would call desirable, and once again, this is not desirable from a revenue perspective, because I think we all know places like Amazon and such are kind of driving a lot of revenue. But if you're looking at those customers as a premium brand, you want to be represented in a particular account, because by the very nature that you're there, it also elevates who you are as a brand. It's fascinating to me to see how their ranging has changed over the last few years. And to your point, many of them now have very tight, very curated ranges. And, you know, some of that, I think, is purely down to the fact that they are choosing brands that are less widely distributed, and perhaps they feel they can be more competitive with as a standalone dealer. And I think some of it, and this is the part you hope your brand falls into, some of it is because that dealer is buying into your brand because they believe in it and they know that it's right for their consumers. But I echo the sentiments that those really good dealers are being a lot fussier about the products they range. The ranges are much more curated, and this is where they become the thought leaders, right? Because they are influential in their areas, because they have that great connection with the cycling communities in their towns, they are able to influence those consumers on the products they buy. So it's a really interesting dynamic, yeah.
Michael, do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, you're talking about the consolidation, having key dealers, right? So ENVE sells in the United States in probably, I don't know, 650 dealers, but we have 70 or so ENVE ride centers, we call them. So they're our key dealers, and they have a requirement. So they have a requirement of carrying all of our products. Maybe not every model, every size, but they have quicker distribution to the store. We set them up separately as a ENVE ride center. So we can't concentrate on all 600 dealers out there. But we have, as you say, we've curated the dealers out there that we feel like we want to be in, and we've made that a small number of stores, and we focus on them for everything.
Steve, how are you guys? How are you guys targeting these key accounts, and how do you see this strategy that we're discussing?
Yeah, no, for sure. There's always been premium or the leading bike shops, but they've changed a lot because it wasn't that many years ago that they were leading because they had such a wide selection. Now that wide selection, if you're looking for something very niche, you can find it online. And so, like John said, they've gone to a much more curated presentation, and just the experience in the store is different. So, but it's interesting that what's remained constant is their impact in creating a community. And I think that will just continue to grow.
Yeah, so for us, managing shops that are premium shops or less premium shops, we leave that to the distributors. So each distributor does it in its way for their local country. We try then to help the distributor and make a little bit of this exclusivity, like a key account. So we invite the distributor together with their main shops, 5 or 10 shops, and they then can come to Victoria Park and they have a nice day together. So it's a bit more than just a buying and selling relationship. But again, it's the distributors that have to do that job. We cannot do it for them.
Well, that sort of wraps up the presentation, the Q&A, or the panel presentation. I want to open it up for Q&A. We've got a few more minutes. So does anybody have any questions? No questions. Oh, okay.
Thanks for the discussion, really interesting. William from Canada. I guess it's a big question, but what we're seeing right now is these big brands like Specialized, they're struggling balancing the D2C and the IBDs, because at the end of the day, they give probably 30 margin to dealers. So how do you manage as a traditional brand to balance the fact that you have a network that build your brand, and now you're trying to undercut or sell online to make sure that you keep this 30% margin in your P&L?
So I think at the beginning of the conversation, we discussed how, generally they're not trying to undercut. At least that's the coexistence that should happen. But I'll let you guys.
I'd like to directly address he brought up this idea that a brand with a DTC is undercutting and double dipping on the margin on selling its own products. And if you look beneath the hood there, when a brand becomes a retailer, he has all the costs of a retailer. Okay, that website, all the procurement, warehousing, shipping, returns, customer acquisition. All of a sudden, Google becomes and Meta become an important line on your line items. So, a brand that's selling on direct to consumer has all those same costs. So they're having the cost as a producer and as a retailer. So it's not exactly a double dip. So the end marginality doesn't change that much as you can imagine, as you're thinking it does. I go back though, like what Stijn said, that the conversion on a direct to consumer website is happy when he said the 1%, because that makes me feel like we're not doing so bad on ours, because we're also at that same level. So 99% of the people there are looking, and hopefully some of them have a positive experience or are buying somewhere else. And I go back to that. You have to have a strong presentation, and that's our best way to support a physical retailer. If you want to have brands that aren't strong digitally, there are some out there, but I don't think that's the kind of brand you want. And I also plainly admit we're not perfect at it. We're learning every single day. We're trying at it, but I'm firmly convinced that bike shop needs to be a crucial part of the chain. And so we need to find a way that makes bike shops profitable, that third-party retailer all the way up the channel. We need to find a way to get more people involved in this sport. So,
I've got a couple of thoughts on that as well, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and defend any of the bike brands. I don't work for one and never have, but I think it's also important to understand the times that many of these brands are working through. So just like dealers as well, brands as well, many of them coming off the back of COVID, sitting on very high inventory, a lot of cash tied up in that stock. There are brands out there that are in a really, really difficult position. And if I look at the whole food chain from the retailer all the way back up to the brand and the vendor, I think the people who are arguably, and once again, I'm speaking in generalizations here, but the people who are arguably in the best position are the retailers, because you are the one who has the one-on-one with the end consumer for the most part. You have the inventory on your shelves. You also have brands or distributors that have huge overstocks that are offering you more and more inventory at lower and lower prices. That in itself causes problems. However, I feel like the retailers have the ability to commercially pull some levers with that one-on-one engagement with the consumer and continue to do business. The people who are really suffering are the people at the top of the food chain, so the vendors, right? They've not had orders come through for a very, very long time, and until the stock moves through the market and the consumer demand kind of restabilizes, those vendors will get very little orders. The brands themselves are the next in line, right? Also, not receiving the orders, unable to keep their vendors happy, and it's really challenging. And let's not forget, and once again, I'm not defending anyone here, but let's not forget that many of those brands are beholden to their shareholders, they're beholden to their staff, they've got people whose livelihoods exist within their businesses. To play devil's advocate, as a brand, you might walk into a store, that store has 4 or 5 different bike brands on the floor, including your own. You feel like perhaps your products aren't selling through quite as fast as they should. You see a competitor's bike wheel off the floor, a salesman's just sold someone else's product. You don't know what to do to accelerate sales. So maybe there are some brands out there kind of taking destiny into their own hands and trying to sell product. Perhaps they're doing it a bit more aggressively. I don't know what the margin comparison is. But I just think, the reality of brands going out of business over the last 3 years is incredibly high. And given where they sit in the food chain, they don't always have the same levers to pull that perhaps a retailer or somebody further down the food chain can do. So not defending anyone, but hopefully just giving you a bit of insight into where people sit in the food chain and how they might be affected given the current times.
Yeah, I want to also break down a myth. You don't make more money on online sales. Everybody thinks, well, they sell at full price, etc. But as Steve just said, there's tons of cost. So we pay more to our shipper than to our people that are working internally. It's incredible. It's insane almost. But so on the bottom line, if you look to EBITDA, not to gross margin, but EBITDA, all the channels are more or less the same margin. So there's not a reason to push one more than the others. The solution to what you just asked is how do you manage this conflict between channels that one channel felt? The only way is to synchronize. So if you do a promotion somewhere, you should do it everywhere. So we're going to do a promotion, a summer sale for new bicycle tires. We'll make sure that we have this online, but we have it also in our shop, and we also have it on Amazon, so that all the channels take, and then nobody's upset, everybody's happy, and everybody benefits. If you don't synchronize, which sometimes has happened in maybe more desperate situations or not coordinated, that creates a lot of trouble. Because if a shop sees that Vittoria sells with a discount online that they cannot offer to their final consumers, they rightfully get upset. So that's the only solution, I think.
Well, we're out of time. I want to thank everybody that came out. These guys are busy. They are running businesses, important cycling businesses, so I really appreciate it. I hope everyone got a lot of value from this. I know I did. I'm going to put up the links. So here are the links to the podcast, and you guys can download the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So thank you again, guys. It was really fun to see all you guys together, meet you guys. And here's to a successful 2024 and an even more successful 2025. Enjoy the show.
Thank you.